So if we saw that, that would actually falsify evolution. I don't know how that's evidence against evolution that we don't see something that falsifies evolution. He also talks about how the human body, it works, so it's irrelevant if it's simple or not. My point wasn't that engineers always make simple things regardless of how they function. My point was that functionality, if it's the same, an engineer would choose a simple choice every time. I don't see how anyone disagrees with that. If they function exactly the same and you can do the exact same things with them, people would choose the simple choice every time. Because that's how we try to achieve goals. We try to achieve a function, like Bill said, it's about function. And then we go for efficiency. And I'm not an engineer, so I'm not trying to discredit him, because he obviously knows much more about that than I do. But I think that's just basically what everyone knows to be true. He mentioned the quote about the transitional fossils being lacking. I found that interesting considering it was from 1982. It's now 2009. So I think that if we updated our research, we might see differently. He asked me how did it get here, and he wants me not to give the explanation or the best explanation, but he says, how do I believe it got here? All the energy, referring to the energy. And again, he said that I was claiming the first and second laws were falsified. I was claiming that the Big Bang Theory, because he was talking about origins, and I know in terms of evolution, he includes the Big Bang in evolution. Talking about origins, I was saying that the Big Bang Theory does not contradict those two laws. That's my point, not that those were falsified. My point was that the Big Bang Theory is perfectly reconcilable with those two laws. That was my point. But how did it get here? What my best explanation is, a lot of people like to hinge on string theory because it's the popular thing to do nowadays. I personally don't buy into string theory too much because of the very same reason that I don't buy into creation. It can't be falsified. There's over, I think the last time I read, there was 500,000 different versions of string theory. So if one universe doesn't fit, or if one string theory prediction does not fit our universe, just change the theory. There's, again, over 500,000 different ways you can discuss string theory to make it fit any universe possible. They claim that there will be predictions that are falsifiable in the future. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of the Large Hadron Collider that went online last year. They claim that will be able to test string theory. I'm a little skeptical, perhaps because I don't know enough about string theory, but my best theory, or my best guess as to how all this energy got here was that it was eternal. And I know Bill says that the universe can't be eternal. There's an alternate theory to string theory that's not as popular, but I think it at least is more tenable. It's called loop quantum gravity, and there was an issue of, I think, Scientific American that ran a few months back discussing loop quantum gravity, that it predicted an oscillating universe, a universe that actually goes through cycles. And this last expansion is just the latest in all the cycles. Now, is that testable? They claim there are some testable hypotheses or predictions that can be made off of it. Again, I'm not terribly sure, but you asked for my best explanation. I'm attempting to give it. I know that's probably not very satisfying to most people. But the question of where the universe came from is a very good question. It's a very good scientific question that should be explored using scientific methods, not invoking the name of a creator, because that stops all of our investigation. If we just say, God did it, we can't figure it out, therefore God must have done it, what do we do now? How do we test it? So the question is a great question. It's something that I look into all the time. Not that I'm answering the question, but I'm curious as to what answers people are coming up with. I just don't think that because we don't have the answer yet, that counts as evidence for creation. There's a lot of things that we've been silent about over the years that we just naturally evoke the hand of God, or excuse me, a creator, because we didn't know the answers. And time after time after time, those get overturned. Time after time, they get overturned. We finally come up with an explanation, and then the God of the gaps, as it's so called, that gap shrinks. God has to go somewhere else. Okay, well, we can't explain this phenomenon, so that's where the creator comes in. Because we can't explain something, it's not evidence for a creator. It just means we have more work to do. That's pretty much all I have for this rebuttal.
Before Bill goes on, we want to kind of take a break for a second and collect the cards that you have. So if you had any questions that you wanted to bring, we're going to work through those before, while they ask and answer questions.
Okay, this is the time I get to ask Phil a question, and then he gets to ask me one. Let's see what number that is. 2 minutes. Okay, Phil talked a lot about falsifiability and testability. Well, my question is in an area of science that's easily testable, falsifiable, and it has to do with the origin of life. We already saw the slide. Life arose from non-living matter on the early Earth. It's a statement, not even a question. Another biology textbook. What was the origin of life? We'll never know for sure, of course, how life on Earth began. But science seeks natural causes for natural phenomena, and that is the approach that must guide scientific inquiry about the origin of life. And I am getting to a question. Okay, the goals of schools should be to educate and teach truth. I think everybody would agree with that. The law of biogenesis teaches that life only comes from life. Yet schools only teach that life began from non-life, okay, which is an anti-scientific belief. Here's my question, and Joel, I request that he gets time, if you need time to look up. Absolutely, take up as much as you want. My question is, do you feel it's proper for schools to teach ideas that contradict laws of science? That's my question. And you can take your time to research if you want.
The question was, do I think it's proper for schools to teach information that is contrary to scientific laws?
Yes.
Short answer, no. I know the implication of the question that, like he points out, biogenesis, the laws of biogenesis, but no, I don't think that science classroom should be teaching well-known falsified information. Since I have another minute or so, it talks about abiogenesis, and Pasteur proved life only comes from life. Actually, what Pasteur, and this, again, out of the book, this isn't my own information, the spontaneous generation that Pasteur and others disproved was the idea that life forms such as mice, maggots, and bacteria can appear fully formed. They disproved the form of creationism, which would be instant creation, very complex life. There is no law of biogenesis that saying very primitive life cannot form from increasingly complex molecules. And very primitive forms of life are just organisms that can self-replicate. Biogenesis says nothing about that. That's pretty much it.
Joel gets the rebut, right?
Yes.
Well, let me get my little thing out here. Well, I would disagree. I believe, I'm a simple guy, life comes from life, no matter what type of life you're talking about. That's what law of biogenesis talks about, life only coming from life. And as a quick rebuttal, just suppose the first life did happen by chance. A bunch of chemicals and energy mixed together, and you've got a living organism, which would be an absolute miracle, and it's falsified by laws of science. Not only does that thing have to be alive, what two things does it have to be able to do? It has to be able to reproduce, which is incredibly complex chemistry, and it has to be able to metabolize. You guys call it eating. Plants call it photosynthesis. By chance, a bunch of chemicals has to become living, be able to reproduce, has to be able to metabolize, and then it has to be able to mutate and survive, or else all us pizza eaters wouldn't be here today. Okay? Lots of miracles if you believe in the theory of evolution. Okay? You get a question.
Can I 10 seconds on the last thing? Last question you asked me?
It's up to the moderator. Sure.
Joel? 10 seconds on the question he asked me, or just move on to the question?
I think we have some time.
Okay. Talked about it being incredibly complex. I have the citation. Self-replication has been witnessed to occur in DNA strands that are as simple as 6 nucleotides. I know that's, probably doesn't mean much to anyone, but 6 nucleotides compared to the whole genome is extremely small. My question for you, and I'm trying to look for a specific answer, because you mentioned a couple of predictions that creationism does make. Those don't really make, creationism doesn't really make those predictions. That's more out of what we observe. The creation model, because you're not identifying the creator, you're not identifying any of his characteristics.